Okay, now that we understand step one, hopefully, and have starting to get hopefully a decent understanding of what this assignment was all about, let's look at step two. Step two, like I said before, is something that I have done many times in my career in regards to breaking up a, let's look at this real fast, breaking up a string, if you will. This would be a record uh, that might come across as a file of sorts. Usually they're like a text delimited, a common delimited file. It's a .text type file, something you might open up in Notepad, and it's used to share data between two different companies. Sometimes we had a company that was passing data to us, and, and so we were taking this data through a text file, and it was comma delimited. Let me say that correctly. And so what we would do is they sent us information on how these records were laid out, like what the first field would be, the second field would be, and so on. But instead of worrying about how big each of the contents of each field would be, we would comma delimit these things. These are still used today. I would say that probably not as much as it used to be because now we pass data using things like XML and JSON, some other things you may hear about in the future. Uh, and so, but we still see comma delimited text files. You can very easily create these text files in Excel and so on. As a matter of fact, Excel even has a way of bringing the text file in and breaking it apart itself. But if you need to do it in a program, this is really what you would be doing. You would basically be putting in some words. Let's just say I want to put Bob Nields. And my address, something like this, in my, dry see so blah, 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 Florence, Kentucky. Is that six of them? One, two, three, four, five, and maybe I'll put in my zip code also. And I want to break this apart. So I want to be able to take this record, if you will. I want to read it into my program, and I'm going to break it apart. Not sure that makes any sense to you, but it will. Promise you, it will. You will be doing this in a little bit in this class, and in subsequent classes, you'll actually be doing it. And so you would break this thing apart, and then you can see that I can now take this thing, break it apart, and what I would be doing is storing these in different columns in a database potentially. And so I would read them in, bring it in from another company, read them in, and put them into my database. That's how we share information back and forth. Okay, so what's cool about this, once again, is once you write this once, you got it. And so we'll be using string manipulation techniques. So once again, if I asked you, how would you do something like this? You may sit back and say, well, I'm going to do something like I did on the count vowels and analyze each one to find the comma. And then based upon that, do like I did the count words, and then use that word and put it there. Uh, and in a way that would work, it gets a little bit tricky because once you find this comma, you get this space between it. You don't want the space. You got to pull this part out of the whole part, and you can actually do that with the substring if you actually do it correctly. So there's a couple of different approaches to doing this. I want to kind of show you an approach that's a little bit different. I think a little bit easier doing it this way. Okay, and so let's get into break apart. As you will see, once again, I validated my record, made sure it was all good. Pretty much cut and pasted what I had before. And then all I'm doing here is just breaking apart the record, okay, which we'll be putting in here. Now, some of you guys may have looked at this and say, oh, this has to be hard. How do I get it into the different text fields or text boxes and so on? Well, there's no magic here. It's an if condition. Okay, I still take it any further than that. Are there better ways? There's other ways of doing it. It gets a little bit more complex. One's called a collection array, or a collection, or a control array, I should say. But for the most part, let's don't make this any harder than it needs to be. I use a select case. I don't know if everybody's seen select cases here, another way of writing a conditional statement, and so on. So let me kind of explain what I did here. And so what I did was I'm going to use this thing called index of. So I'm going to use it as an example of index of. Index of basically goes and finds the first occurrence of whatever it is you're searching. So in this case here, it's going to find the comma, okay, in my string str record. okay? And it's going to bring that back to my index. It's going to show me where it's at index-wise. So once again, if I sit back and I have, I'm going to put this here just for the sake of it doesn't mess up on me, Bob Niels like I had before, and then 8741 Rosebrook. This is a string once again. So in my record, the index of the first comma will be 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is going to return the third index. So it's the fourth location, but the third index. Once again, we need to understand that. So then what is this going to do in this case? It would do this. It will come down here. I have this little counter I had here. And so the first time through, I'm going to, since I told you you're going to have 6 fields here, now you might sit back and say, well, wonder if I have more than that. Well, then you can use the length, or you can use until, you can actually do this until int index equals -1. You might be sitting back saying, well, why -1? So if I don't know how many I have, and maybe I'm doing things, I don't have a set number of text boxes, I could use go till -1. So if it can't find the next comma, it will return a -1. So if I sit back and say do index of comma and there is no commas, okay, or it's beyond the other commas, or there's no such thing as beyond the other commas. I shouldn't say that. Basically, in this case, there is no more commas. It will return a -1. So let's kind of play around how this would actually work. So this one will come back and have the fourth location. In this case here, what it's going to do, it's going to have my count. I'm going to do a select case on the count. int count is another way of writing a conditional statement. It's basically saying if my count equals 1, go ahead and put it in my field1.text. And I'm going to start at substring 0, and I'm going to go, this is how many characters you want, I'm going to go to that index. See how the index almost works in 2 ways here? The index is coming back to 0, 1, 2, 3, and what I want to actually pull back is this, starting the 0 location, the next piece of this is 3 characters. If we go and look at this one more time, I'm sorry, went the wrong way, substring. It is what's the starting index and how many characters do you want to pull off? That's what substring does. What's the starting index? How many characters? So again, utilizing logic and utilizing what's given to me, I can sit back and say, well, this index is telling me where it found the comma, and where it found the comma is actually the same number of characters I want to pull off. This is 0, 1, 2, 3. I want to pull off 1, 2, 3. Does that make sense? Usually beginning students have a hard time with this index thing. Don't make it any harder than it is. Indexes start at index 0, but I can use this index to do all kinds of fun things and utilize it as data. It's always going to be, so if I sat back and I put in Bobby Niels, my old high school name, feel free to call me Bobby anytime. If I put Bobby Niels, it'd be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And so it will be the 5th location, 0, but I want to go over 1, 2, I want 5 different characters here, so it always works. Pretty neat? All right. What's going to happen here is it'll stick that to the field, it'll come down here. What I need to do, index of does not go to the next comma. What I need to do now is remove that first part that we just did, meaning the Bobby part of it. I need to remove this, okay? And so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my str record, which has basically all of this in here. It's going to do a dot remove, starting in the 0 location, the 0 index, for index plus 1. Remember, my index in this case was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But the index is counting how many characters plus 1. So what this is going to do is remove Bobby plus the comma. Again, this is not the index. This is how many characters you want to remove. So my index tells me how many, 5 in this case, plus 1. And I will now get rid of this. As you notice, I have a space there. So what I'm going to do is trim that so it actually gets rid of the space. I'm going to add 1 to my count. So I go to my next field and I'm going to then search for it again. I'm going to search for the comma. If after this case here, so this will be gone, the space will be gone, you'll go through here and put Niels. End up putting Niels in field 2 because my count is now 2. You'll go back down here, remove it, and trim it. And then now what it's going to do is go search for that comma again. Well, there is no more comma. In this case, there's no more comma. What I did in my program was, if there's no more comma, go ahead, it's going to fall out of the loop. This is going to return a -1. It's going to fall out of the loop, and I'm just going to stick that into my text field 6 in this, on my text field 6, yeah, .text. I'm going to put that in there. And I'm going to do the substring, which basically says 0 and whatever's after that. So I didn't tell, if I don't tell it how many characters, it will return all the rest of the characters after the 0 position. Does that make sense? So in this case here, once again, logic. I can't teach you logic sometimes. You got to be able to see this problem. I have to be able to sit back and say, I need to find a comma. Once I find the comma, I got to figure out what field to put it into. Well, it's all based upon the first and the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth, correct? And so I just added a little counter in there. All right? It's just logic. A lot of people want to try to find magic here. Oh, I must find a string manipulation technique that's magical. There isn't one that's magical in this case. This is how you got to do it. So I combine index of, substring, remove, and trim to do what I actually wanted to do. Does that make sense? Okay, pretty cool. So let's go ahead quickly here, and I will start this thing up. And let's watch this work real quick before we end this video. In this case here, we'll do Bob, comma, I'll just put, see, Rose, put all my kids in here, Sydney, if I can spell her name, Sydney, Adam, and Alec. Poor Alec's always last. All right, and so I'm going to break these apart. I come in here. My string actually has Bob, Rose, Sydney, Adam, Alec. You see that there? It's going to do function F11. My index is going to be 3. And so that would be 0, 1, 2, 3. That's where it found it at, right? The 4th position. So it's not equal to -1. Let's do this quickly. We come down here. My int count is 1, so it's going to stick that into the first text field. It's pretty wild when you see these things when a professor does them, right? So now I'm going to take Bob, okay? I'm going to remove from 0 to 3 plus 1. I'm going to remove 4 characters. I do that. Now look at my record. Bob is gone. All right. I add 1 to my count. I trim it. If there is no spaces, it won't trim anything. But if there's spaces, it will trim it. Okay. For us, I'm going to do the next one. My next index of is in index 4. So it found Rose. My int count, as you see, is now 2. And so it's going to come down to there and put Rose in there. Okay. Isn't that beautiful? And I trimmed it again, and you see that my record now only has Sydney and Adam. So let's keep going through there. You put Adam in the 3rd one, or Sydney in the 3rd one, I should say. You'll put Adam in the 4th one. Come through here, and then in this case here, what happened was my string only has Alec in it. There is no comma, so it fell out of the loop, and I'm just going to now put Alec into this text field right here. Okay, starting in the 0 location, no matter how long it is, and there's Alec right there. And if we come back to the form, and here we are, everybody is there. Oh, what happened to, let's see, oh, I only had 5. I'm sorry, I didn't have 6, but that's okay. Okay, since I didn't have 6 of them, it put Alec in the 6th field. That's how I had it programmed. I, for some reason, thought I had another kid, my long lost kid. I don't know. I guess I should go adopt somebody. I'll put my dog in there next. Anyway, you kind of get the idea. So if I do this one more time and do add my dog, let's see. I got a new puppy named Lincoln. Oh, I didn't want to do all that. Boom, 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 boom. Let's see. Let's do this very quickly. Here we go. Going around, going around, going around. And Lincoln should end up in the last one. Now, as we do this one more time, there you go. All right. And that's how you do breaking that apart. Again, no magic. Okay, that's what's a little